All right, well, let's look at Genesis 25. Now, our main reading is going to be in Genesis 27, but Genesis 25 is going to introduce us to what we're going to be looking at tonight. And when we're looking at these sections, keep in mind that what we are doing and what the goal is of what we're going to be looking at in Jacob's life tonight is understanding how, in one sense, there can be individuals trying to accomplish their own goals with their own sins, their own ways, their own attitudes and problems and all of the difficulties going on. And at the same time, God is accomplishing his purpose. And so there's two things going on. We're looking at a story where, to their own perspective, in their own mind, in their own thoughts, they are just bringing out what they want to see take place, the things that they want to accomplish. And at the same time, God is bringing about his will. And so what we're going to be looking at tonight, what we're going to be focusing on, is how does God accomplish his purposes with people that fail? And this should be a little bit of encouragement too, because I don't have to look very far back in my life, and there's lots of failure. But I can also look back and see that even through the failure that God used in my life, my own failure, God used it to bring about his will in my life, and continues to do so. So that should bring us some encouragement. Now, the type, well, I mean, this is okay. I did put the scripture up as well, and that's going to be a lot smaller because I had to squish it in. So if you can't see it, you can follow along in Genesis 25. So this is going to be the main question for tonight. How does God accomplish his purposes when every major character in the story fails? And then we're going to start by looking at the background in Genesis 25. So let's start at verse 21, Genesis 25 and 21. And Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife because she was barren. And the Lord was entreated of him, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. And the children struggled together within her, and she said, if this is the case, why is this happening to me? All right, if God heard the prayer of my husband, and he answered the prayer, why is this struggle going on? I don't understand. And so she goes to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord says to her, 2 nations are in your womb. All right, it's not just simply 2 babies. You're not just simply having twins. They represent 2 nations, 2 different types of people, 2 manners of people shall be separated from your bowels. The one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, there were twins in her womb, and the first came out red and all over like a hairy garment. They called his name Esau. And after that, his brother came out, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 60 years old when she bare them. And now notice how the boys are described. So it says that she bare them, and the boys grew. And Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field. Jacob was a plain man, dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau because he did eat of his venison, but Rebekah loved Jacob. And we know the story. Jacob and the pottage. Esau comes from the field. He's tired. He's hungry. And he says, feed me with that which you have made, that same red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore, his name is called Edom. And Jacob said, sell me this day thy birthright. What profit shall this birthright do to me, says Isaac. And Jacob says, swear to me this day. And he swore unto him, and he sells his birthright to Jacob. And at the last verse, notice that last section, thus Esau despised his birthright. And so we're going to be looking tonight, we're going to be turning to Genesis 27, where our main section is, but we're going to be looking at this question, how does God accomplish his purposes when everyone in the story fails. And notice that in this section in Genesis 25, notice that before anything has ever happened, before Jacob and Esau grow up, before they do anything right or wrong or anything for God or against God, any purposes, before anything has taken place, God has already chosen that one of them will be the person that his covenant is brought through. And to make it even more of a contrast, notice that what has already taken place already in the book of Genesis. So Abraham comes in Genesis chapter 11, and he fills up that little section from 11 to 25. Isaac comes in. Isaac's going to take 21 to 35. So it's getting that focus is getting bigger. And Jacob's going to take up 25 to the end of Genesis in chapter 50. And remember that in all three cases, I guess it'd be two cases because one would be Abraham. But in the case of Abraham and his child, remember that the individual's wife, in the case of Abraham, Sarah's wife, was unable to have children. And there's that entreating before God, and she bears a child. Again, with Isaac. Isaac's wife is unable to have children. We just read that here in Genesis 25. Again, he entreats God, and a child comes, or actually twins come in. And this is going to happen again with Jacob. So not only is the focus getting larger with Abraham and with Isaac and with Jacob, as that story in the covenant of God is developing and it's focusing in and becoming larger in the book of Genesis, also it requires the power of God. In each of those cases, they were unable to bear. Then the third thing to remember when we're looking at this, so it's not just the focus getting bigger, it's not just God's power taking place, it's not just the promises of God that are being revealed, but also notice that who God chooses is not the one you would normally choose. So remember with Abraham, of course, there was Ishmael and Isaac. Normally speaking, it would have been Ishmael, the firstborn, that God would, or that the birthright would go through, and following with that with the blessing as well. But God chooses the second. Again, with here with Esau and with Jacob, the question, the assumption is, well, naturally it's going to be Esau. All right, he's the firstborn. Notice too, even how the brothers are described. It shows there down in verse 27 that Esau was the cunning hunter and Jacob was the plain man. And you could look at the two of them and you could think, out of the two individuals that are there, Esau is obviously the leader. He's the hunter. He's that, the idea of the warrior, the leader. But God chooses Jacob. Remember, before Jacob had ever done anything, right? Before he had carried out any aspect of his life, good or bad, God chooses him. Now, this is going to connect with the idea of Jacob have I loved and Esau have I hated. That verse isn't the idea of some emotional statement of God, but it goes back to what we just read here in 23. Two nations are in your womb, right here. Two manner of people. And it's not that there's an emotional statement of I love one and I don't love the other. It's the idea of preference. And it's not just simply of preferring Jacob or preferring Esau or not preferring one or the other. But he says here, so this isn't the idea of salvation, just to make that clear. It's one people shall be stronger than the other, and the elder shall serve the younger. So this idea of service shows that this idea of loving one, hating the other, this is the idea of covenantal preference. I choose Jacob. Now that should help us tonight, because Jacob was not a perfect man. At this point, I wouldn't even say he was a good man. He was a liar. We're going to see that. He essentially steals, right? He's deceptive. He's not the kind of person that you would think God would use to carry out his purposes. And now the question could be asked, well, in what way was Esau less preferred? And I want you to think about this for a second, if maybe even in the week that's ahead. One of the things I think that was probably not to the perspective of Esau, but certainly not to the perspective of Jacob, I want you to consider this. Jacob, over and over and over again, had to face and had to endure the chastening of God all through his life. He had to face it. And God chastens him and puts him through this, and he wrestles with the angel there, and over again he's put under this chastening of God, and yet we don't read anything of his brother Esau facing the chastening of God. You look in the book of Hebrews, and he says, you endure chastening. Well, of course you do. You're children. What father, what parent, if they really love their child, they're going to chasten their child? Because they want their child to become someone that they can use. Or that's actually the application of God. They want their child to become someone who God can use. They want their child to grow up. They want their child to mature. They want their child to develop. And with that comes the idea of chastening. Esau didn't. We don't read anything of Esau being chastened. So you have to ask yourself, if we're going to go through times of chastening and times of difficulty, and life gets difficult and hard, and we go through circumstances and we wonder, why is God allowing this in my life? Why do I have to face this? If he really loved me, if God really cared, why is he allowing this in my life? Why is he putting me through this? Why did this have to happen after everything that I've tried to do for him? I try to serve him. I try to love him. I try to read. I try to pray. I try to do everything right. And here I am, and he allowed this. He's trying to make you someone that he can use. He wants you to grow, and he wants you to become mature. So we have a problem. We already kind of talked about that. Esau, the firstborn, the one you would naturally expect, the man of the field, and Jacob, the secondborn, who dwells in the tents. Just a quick touch on the difference between the blessing and the birthright. The birthright has a legal aspect to it. And as we've already noticed, the blessing could be transferred, the blessing could be sold. The birthright could be transferred, the birthright could be sold. That's what took place in the life of Esau. The blessing, however, this is the idea of covenant promises. This is God's purposes being accomplished in a specific way through his own covenant agreement originally with Abraham, and then again it's confirmed with Isaac, and later with Jacob. All right, so that comes from God, and how it was really displayed. It was displayed through the blessing, a prophetic blessing placed on the child from the father. So they're connected, but they're different. Now we're going to move into our main section, and we won't be right till the end of time tonight. We have a busy week coming up, and tomorrow, July 1st, we have a problem. Isaac loved Esau, and Rebekah loved Jacob. And the question comes down, if in our own relationships, our own family interactions, and from that in the assembly. You think of James, and James writes of the individual coming in and the goodly apparel, and he points out that our behavior can change based upon who it is that we're interacting with. And the question really comes down, is my interaction with you and your interaction with me, is it based upon my appreciation of your value in God? Or is there perhaps favoritism? Maybe I get along really well with you and I don't get along really well with that individual. And so I behave in a way that benefits them, and I behave in a way that takes away from that individual. Here we see that not only can this be in the assembly, but this was in a family. Isaac loved Esau, Rebekah loved Jacob. And so now the question is going to come into this place. And I told you the type is going to be way too small, so I do apologize for that. Luckily, everyone brought their Bibles tonight and can follow along. So we won't read the whole section, but what we're going to just notice before we get down to the main area, we're going to notice before the story gets into the covenant issues between Jacob and his father, is that if you look down to, we'll start at verse 1. It says, "And it came to pass that when Isaac was old, his eyes were dim, that he could not see. He calls Esau his eldest, and he says to him, 'My son.' And he says, 'Behold, here am I.' He says, 'I don't know the day of my death. Now therefore take, I pray thee, thy weapons, and thy quiver, and thy bow. Go out into the field and take me some venison, so I might eat, and that my soul,'" notice that there in verse 4, "that my soul may bless thee before I die." Now remember, in 25, they had already been told who was supposed to receive the blessing. All right? So Isaac would have already known that. So here, remember, Jacob's not perfect, Rebekah's not perfect, Esau's certainly not perfect, and Isaac's not perfect. And see, what we have here is we have Isaac, the one, it seems that this was private. He's trying to privately bless the one that he wanted to see the blessing. So you can kind of see the character and nature of Isaac kind of showing up here. But he doesn't even seem to include his wife, Rebekah. So notice in verse 5, "And Rebekah heard," but there she heard when Isaac spake to Esau his son, as if he wasn't included in it. And even Jacob's not included in the conversation. And so it's this idea that Isaac and seeks to interact with Esau without anyone else, likely it seems not even his wife, and I'm going to secretly bless him, get the one that I want to see the blessing, and not include anyone else. And Rebekah hears. So she says to Jacob, that's the one. Of course, here we have this family divide taking place in verse 6. "Behold, I heard your father speak unto Esau thy brother, saying, Bring me venison, make me savory meat, that I may eat and bless thee before the Lord my death. Now therefore, my son, obey," whose voice? My voice. Obey my voice. Really raises the question too, as parents, or as assembly elders, or as leaders, whatever the place that God may place you, are you trying to make people simply obedient to you or to me? Is that the ultimate purpose? Or is it that I want them to be ones that hear the voice of God? She says, "Hear my voice." Now, you can see really even her own, now mind you, okay, let's back, she was the one that went to the Lord and asked why. She had the question, why, if I'm having these children, you answered the prayer, right? This is your will. So why is this going on? Why is this struggle happening to me? And the answer comes, there's something deeper going on, Rebecca. All right, I am accomplishing a purpose here. All right, there's two nations. I'm going to develop my covenant promise between these two. So she knows what God has said. So it's not necessarily that Rebecca is trying to do the wrong thing, but she is doing the wrong thing. She's lying. And she's trying to accomplish God's purpose, it would seem, but the wrong way. Obey my voice. Now here's what I want you to do. Go to flock, verse 9. Take the kids of the goats, I'll make them savory meat for your father, such as he loveth. And thou shalt bring it to thy father, that he may eat, that he may bless thee before his death. And Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, Behold, Esau my brother is a hairy man, I am a smooth man. My father peradventure will feel me, and I shall seem to him as a deceiver. Right there. Well, of course you will seem to him as a deceiver, because that's exactly what you are. You would be a deceiver. And I shall bring a curse upon me and not a blessing. And the mother says, On me be the curse, my son. Now it is amazing to think that Rebekah, despite her love for Jacob, and trying in perhaps the wrong way to accomplish something good, the will of God, doing it the wrong way, the consequences of what happens here is she loses the relationship with her son Jacob. She has to live with the consequences of that, as Jacob is forced to flee from the home because of this and leave. And so, despite her attempts deceptively to accomplish the will of God, it brings the consequence of actually dividing her from her son. So it says, Upon me be thy curse, right there in 13. Only obey my voice and go fetch me them. And he goes, fetches it, brings it to his mother. The mother makes a savory meat, such as the father loves. And Rebekah brings the clothes of her eldest son Esau, I'm just kind of paraphrasing here, which were with her in the house, puts them on Jacob, takes the skins of the goats, put them on his hands and the smooth of his neck, gives him the meat, which she had prepared to the hand of her son Jacob. And he comes to his father and says, My father, and he says, my father, and he said, Here am I, who art thou, my son? If you're going to study in the life of Jacob, that question of who are you, I won't get into it tonight, but that question of who are you, notice where that comes up again in Jacob's life. That's going to be really important, but we're not going to get into that tonight. Who are you? Jacob says unto his father, so notice this is now Jacob's failure. It was one thing to put on the garments that his mother had given him and to bring the meat that his mother had made. I am Esau. I have done. Arise, I pray thee, sit and eat of my venison, that thy soul may bless me. And here the third time, so there's two lies in 19. I am Esau, I have done as you asked. And then in verse 20, how is it that I was found it so quickly, my son? And he said, because the Lord thy God, brought it to me. Jacob's going to learn in quite a difficult way who the Lord thy God is. So Isaac says to Jacob, come near. Let me feel your hands, your arms, if you're really my son. Esau, Jacob goes near and he says, well, the voice is Jacob's, but the hands are of Esau, and he discerned him not. And he said, are you my very son Esau? And he said, I am. He said, bring it near, and I will eat of my son's venison, that my soul may bless thee. And he brought it near to him, he did eat. He brought him wine, and he drank. And his father said unto him, come now near, kiss me, my son. And he came near and kissed him, and he smelt the smell of his raiment, and blessed him, and said, see, the smell of my son is the smell of the field, which the Lord hath blessed. Therefore, now we're getting into the blessing. So this is going to be the blessing. So the first thing that happens, therefore God give thee of the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth and plenty of corn and wine. And so this is going to be a blessing of the produce that would come from or to Jacob. Let people serve you, and nations bow down to thee. Be Lord over thy brethren, and let thy mother's sons bow down to thee. And here's the covenant promise here. This is what was given to Abraham. This cursed be everyone that curses thee, and blessed be he that blessed thee. So this is the covenant promise that is given unknowingly to Jacob, right? Isaac doesn't know, still doesn't know that this is Esau. We're going to see what happens. And it came to pass, as soon as Isaac had made an end of blessing Jacob, Jacob had yet scarce gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, that Esau his brother came in from his hunting. And he also had made savory meat. And he brings it to his father. He says to his father, let my father arise and eat of my son's venison, that thy soul may bless me. And Isaac said unto him, who are you? And he said, I am your son, your firstborn Esau. And notice this right here. And Isaac trembled very exceedingly. This is quite an interesting phrase, actually. And Isaac trembled a great trembling exceedingly. He realizes what has just happened. Where is he that has taken venison and brought it to me, and I have eaten all of it? And this right here at the end, yea, and he shall be blessed. Remember, this was the verse that's going to be centered on tonight. Yea, and he shall be blessed. So here's what's happened. Isaac has blessed Jacob. Jacob has deceived his father. Jacob has left. Esau comes in. Esau asks about the blessing. Isaac realizes what has taken place, and he realizes that despite his attempts to accomplish his own will, God has done it anyways. And he trembles. And the realization hits Isaac. Yea, and he shall be blessed. And he realizes that despite my intentions, despite what I tried to do, he's going to receive the blessing. That was the promise. I can't stop it from happening. Yea, and he shall be blessed. Esau hears the words of his father. He cries. Notice again, there's the extra character added to the suffering here. It's not just Isaac who trembles a great trembling exceedingly. It's Esau who cries with a great and bitter cry exceedingly. Sin hurts. Consequences hurt. And it reminds us that even as God is accomplishing his purpose and he's using failing, sinning, fallen people, the consequences of sinful behavior hurts people. It hurts us. The consequences don't go away. Even if God accomplishes his purpose, it doesn't take away the pain connected with sin. And Esau cries. Isaac trembles. Jacob is going to be forced to flee. And Esau turns to his father and he's crying, and he cries with an exceeding bitter cry. And you can see that just the suffering in Esau's life. And it's as if everything has come together, and And back in chapter 25, and this is connected with Hebrews chapter 12, he realizes that I looked so lightly on what I had as the firstborn. I took it for granted. And I saw something that I wanted right now, and the blessing that I could have had in the future, I gave it up for something now. And the consequences of that hits Esau. What's left for me? Now, Esau does blame Jacob. He has supplanted me these 2 times, took away my birthright. Well, that's true. But Esau is partly to blame for that as well. He was the one who gave it up. But behold, now he hath taken away my blessing. Is there anything left? Esau says to his father, hast thou but one blessing, my father? In verse 38, bless me now. And Isaac answers and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth, and the dew of the heaven from above. By the sword shall thou live, serve your brother, and it shall come to pass when thou shalt have the dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. Now, time, I was intending to be done already, so I'll look at wrapping this up in just a couple of minutes. God's purposes prevailing today. Now, here's what we can really take hope in, and this is what can be an encouragement of it, because as I look back in my life and I consider all of the ways that I deviated from what I knew God wanted me to do, or didn't do things that God wanted me to do, I can take comfort in this, that God still reigns. And he still accomplishes his will. And despite all that Rebekah trying to accomplish it through her deception, and Isaac trying to accomplish his own will through taking Esau aside and kind of secretly blessing Esau without Rebekah and Jacob being involved, and despite Esau taking lightly on his blessing, and here Jacob deceives everyone, and he deceives even himself. Despite all that, Isaac's hit with the implication of it just hits Isaac right in the face, and he trembles a great trembling. He's going to be blessed. That's what God said. Despite all that I've tried to do, God's will remains. And Proverbs 19:21 says, many of the plans in a man's heart, nevertheless, the counsel of the Lord, that shall stand. In the week that's ahead, and we have a conference coming up, maybe we just take comfort in this, is that God knows you for what you are, and he knows me for what I am. He knows what I'm going to do. He knows my failures before I even fail. He knows my thoughts before I even think them. He's going to accomplish his will. Despite my plans, good or bad, right or wrong, he's in control. And this should give me comfort, because it'll get my eyes off of my own failures, and it'll get my thoughts on him. So we're going to pray and just remember that the counsel of the Lord, it will stand. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you just for simple thoughts about Jacob and his life. And we consider for a fact that Jacob, despite his wickedness, and Isaac and Rebekah and Esau, that what we can learn and appreciate is that through it all, despite their failures, God accomplished his will. Jacob was chosen for the covenant, and Jacob would eventually be used by thee. We thank you that we can look at our own hearts, and we can appreciate that you knew where we would be, and you are able to accomplish your will despite our weakness and failures. We thank you for the person of the Lord Jesus Christ. We ask that you remember the prayers of your people and be with us in the days that are ahead. Forgive us our weakness, our sinfulness, our selfishness, and help us to display the person and character of Christ. We thank you in his worthy and most precious name. Amen.